This review was filmed during the 2023 WGA and SAG-AFTRA strikes. Without the labor of the writers and actors currently on strike, the works being covered here wouldn't exist. I fully support both the WGA and SAG-AFTRA in their fight for fair treatment and compensation against a system that continually denies them such. While a full boycott has not been called for, SAG-AFTRA has asked that everyone who does media about film and TV refrain from promoting struck content during this time. From what I can tell based on guidelines released, independent reviews do not constitute promotion of work, but as critical assessment of a work of art. Any praise I give to these works should be seen purely as praise for the artists, writers, and actors who created it. If anything, the praise is emphasizing that the writers, actors, and other artists deserve more compensation because they are who make these works possible. Additionally, this video was not made using any studio-provided screeners or materials. Do not support any studios during the strike. If you want to know more information, there are links down in the description for you to follow. Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest Minty reviews, and we are here for probably the first time ever, a very right off the bat review for a show that has come out, because normally I wait a day so I can actually record the episode and edit them, but no, because it's the brand new Star Wars series, we are here the day after for Ahsoka. I have been waiting so long for this show, and I have been so excited for this show, and I can say off the bat, without any spoilers, this show delivers. This show delivers. I really enjoy the first two episodes. Master and Apprentice was episode 1, and then Toil and Trouble episode 2. I'll get into them in spoilers as well, but first off, non-spoiler thoughts here first, so non-spoilers here. I really, really like the first two episodes. I thought they were... They moved by quickly, I will say. They moved by very, very quickly. However, it's one of those things with Star Wars series in general. This is like one of the few minor critiques I have. I have a few more in the spoiler section, but just a few minor critiques. It's like, even though the episodes move very quickly and go by very fast, and this show definitely did, it felt like, at least in the first episode, not a lot felt like it was happening until the very end. And this is like a minor critique, because like watching the episode, you're like, I'm enjoying everything that I'm seeing right now. Like, I'm really, really enjoying it. And maybe it's just because I have a very deep knowledge of certain things that are shown in the show. I wasn't lost either. I was on board the whole time. I knew what was going on, and I know there are some people who've had issues with that just because they've come into the show without certain things, having watched certain things beforehand. Again, I'll get into that in spoilers, but for me personally, I didn't feel like I was lost during it. It's just at certain times, it's like, okay, they can kind of like move on here a little bit, mainly just because of like certain scenes with like some puzzle solving elements. I'll just say that, where it's like, okay, you don't have to show the entire puzzle happening here. You don't have to like show all of the slow moments here. You can like, you can kind of skip around a little bit just for like filmmaking technique wise, but beyond that, the acting was phenomenal. I do very much love all the actors in this cast, and some of them are growing on me, I will say. Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano, I think she's a good Ahsoka Tano. I think she is definitely growing into the role of Ahsoka more. Coming from having watched all the animated stuff, I'm still missing Ashley Eckstein, and this is nothing against Rosario Dawson at all. It's just Ashley Eckstein was Ahsoka for so long. It's one of those things where like, is it going to be difficult to like replace his character or replace this like voice? And that's a lot of things. Like, a lot of my other critiques for the show just come to the personal voices that I remember some of these characters having. So that, but also like Natasha Liu Bordizzo is phenomenal in it. I just am a stan for Mary Elizabeth Winstead anyway, so I love me some Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And I will also say, may he rest in peace as well, Ray Stevenson is doing a phenomenal job as one of the main antagonists. He's doing a phenomenal job. But there's also a lot of other stuff in here too. Other final non-spoiler thing, and then I'll get into spoilers because there's a lot to talk about here with these first two episodes, is that the score that was done by Kevin Kiner is so good. It is so good. And I'll talk a little bit about it in some spoiler section as well, just a little bit more. But his score is so good. And that's basically all I can really say for the first two episodes. Oh, there's also a lot of Easter eggs. Like, a lot of Easter eggs that I'm definitely not going to get into in this video because I don't think I can. There's just too many of them. But there's a lot of Easter eggs, especially if you've watched certain shows. You will kind of freak out about some of them, and they're pretty good. But either way, that's all the non-spoiler I can give. I really enjoyed these first two episodes. Really enjoyed them. So glad this series is happening now. So glad they're actually doing it. and I'm really excited for what's coming in the future, and I'm just hoping that some of these characters, some of these voices grow on me, because I'm so used to certain other voices and other portrayals of certain characters here. But it's great. It's really good Star Wars, and I think it starts off stronger than the other Star Wars series have recently. So, with that out of the way, into spoilers now. Now we're getting into spoilers here. Spoilers here, everyone. So, in 3, 2, 1... Rebels. Oh my god, Rebels. Okay, so here's the thing. I already knew going into it, just based on the trailers alone, because they showed us in the trailers, and just the general premise of the series, is like, we were going to get some form of the Rebels in live action with this series, because this series takes place obviously after Rebels ends, but it literally takes place in that after the 5-year time gap at the end of Rebels. If you haven't watched Rebels, I'll say this I'll say this here. If you have not watched Rebels, I personally don't think you'll be as lost. Now, if you have watched Rebels, there's a lot more of the show that you'll gain, that you'll definitely gain, because they do reference a lot of Rebels. This is like a soft sequel to Rebels, like it 100% is. They do a lot referencing Rebels. I personally don't think they do too much that loses you. There might be a few mentions here and there for like Ezra that you might not fully understand, but honestly, at this point in fandom, a quick Google search, you'll be able to figure it out. Like, you'll be able to figure it out and be on board. I think the show does a good job of explaining what it needs to explain in the first 2 episodes to get you on board. And I think the storyline that they're going with here is also really, really good, even if you haven't watched Rebels. You can basically immediately understand, it's like, okay, they're going after Thrawn. I might not know who Thrawn is, but I know he's a bad guy. I know I've heard him mentioned in Mandalorian before, so they're going after Thrawn. Ezra, don't know who Ezra is, but he's clearly somebody important. They show you a hologram of Ezra. It's like, okay, clearly he has connection to Sabine, to Ahsoka, to Hera. He has a connection to all of them. Clearly, he's an important character. I might not know who he is, but he's important. They're going after him, I guess. That's cool. And it explains it enough. It does enough filmmaking stuff to explain what it needs to explain. Now, does it explain necessarily who Sabine is and who Hera are? It does enough. Again, it does enough. You know from the jump when we meet Hera, it's like, she is General Syndulla. She is General Hera Syndulla of the New Republic. Cool. That means she's a high-ranking New Republic official. She clearly has a history with Ahsoka. All you need to know. Okay, if you've watched Rebels, you know what that history is. If you haven't watched Rebels, you don't need to know that much. And then Sabine's the interesting one, because clearly some stuff has happened in that 5-year time span between the actual end of Rebels and technically the end of Rebels, the last scene of Rebels, which they also do in the series as well. They do in the second episode, at the very end of the second episode of Ahsoka, they just recreate the last scene of Rebels, which I love. I love that so much. But clearly some stuff happened there, because now Sabine is Ahsoka's Padawan, which is like, okay, cool, we're having another Jedi Mandalorian. Even though I know Ahsoka's not a Jedi, I understand that. I know she's not. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep calling her Jedi. It makes way more sense to do that in simplicity's sake. But, so clearly that happened in the 5-year jump. That's intriguing. So we're going to have some intriguing, like, master-apprentice type of storytelling here and character moments here between these two. Because in these first few episodes, they have a contentious relationship. It's still on terms with each other, but you can tell that, like, some stuff happened. And they explain it as well as, like, Ahsoka walked out on Sabine. Ahsoka couldn't take the responsibility, basically, and left training Sabine. And Sabine felt hurt by that. So then it basically took Hera doing her mom Hera stuff to be like, no, it's okay. You just need to kind of like work your way back in there and just go to her anyway, because she's not going to ask you to return. So you're just going to have to do it yourself, and she does. So they get them back together by the end of the episodes. It's really good. But yeah, so clearly that happened at the end of sometime in between this. So like, what's going on there? It's going to be intriguing. It's going to be really intriguing, really interesting to see what is happening there. But beyond that, we also have what's going on with the actual, villains of the series, or the antagonist here. So we have these two not Jedi. They're Force users of some sort, but they're not Sith, because they're not using red lightsabers, they're using orange lightsabers, which is very intriguing. That's a whole new thing. But we have Baylan Skoll, which, by the way, Baylan Skoll, that's just a villain name. So, like, if you didn't realize he was a villain beforehand, he has a villain name. but also played by the wonderful late great Ray Stevenson. Phenomenal. And you also have Shin Hati. They don't ever actually mention her name, but Shin Hati is his apprentice, played by Ivana Sakano. They're both really good. They both are really, really good in what they're doing as antagonists, because they are, for the most part, they are like the mirrors of Ahsoka and Sabine at this point, which is really, really cool to see that, where you have this master and apprentice who are on the same page, who have gone through the training, who know each other's movements very well, and Shin like clearly follows Baylan like to a T, and like does whatever he says, and is a perfect apprentice to his master, which is very intriguing. But then you also bring back in Morgan Elspeth from Mandalorian, which we saw in the episode that introduced Ahsoka in Mandalorian. You bring her back, and we find out that she's actually the last of the Night Sisters, which is really, really cool. Like, that is incredibly cool. And the Night Sisters are basically space witches. They're literally called witches in this. So, like, you know how the joke is, like, the Force is space magic? Well, the Night Sisters actually use literal space magic. Like, not the Force, they use space magic, which is really cool. But anyway, she's a Night Sister, and she's trying to get Thrawn back. And that's their whole plot. Their whole plot is to, I believe by the end of the second episode, we kind of get the idea. They're building a really big, like, hyper jump ship I believe it's called like the Eye of Solace, I think is what it's called. They're building that to then get this map. I also have this map as well, to then find Thrawn, to get Thrawn back, to basically do what they need to do with Thrawn coming back, which understandable, which then starts the whole plot. Now we have a race for one, Ahsoka and Sabine to get the map back, and then to find Ezra and Thrawn, and for Baylan, Shin, and Morgan to get the map, build the thing, and then go get Thrawn. So we have a really cool, like, competing storyline there of, like, who's going to get what first. And it all basically comes down to the fact that Sabine solved the map, but then lost it. But then they figured out where they're going, so now they're following them. So it's a really good back and forth storytelling here. And I did mention this in the non-spoiler section. Star Wars series up to this point, especially like all the Disney Plus series, have had a weird way of storytelling where, like, there are times in the episodes where it just feels like nothing's really happening. And that does happen. That does definitely happen in both episodes, where it's like, it feels like they kind of take a little bit too long to explain something, or just a little bit too long to show what's happening. But then there are other times where it's like, okay, you're not taking necessarily enough time to explain what's happening, or like you're not doing enough talking here to explain something. It's a weird thing. It doesn't affect it as badly here as it does in something like Mandalorian, or in Obi-Wan for sure, or in Book of Boba Fett. It doesn't affect it as much as those shows did. Like this one does move very quickly with that. And the other critique I will have with the series, there's actually two critiques. The other minor critique is Sabine gets stabbed with a lightsaber at the end of episode 1. At this point in Star Wars, unfortunately, wounds like that kind of don't mean anything, because they've already introduced the idea of Bacta tanks in Mandalorian and force healing in the sequels. So any type of like major injury like that kind of doesn't feel like it's important anymore. To the point where, like, in episode 2, she just gets healed. Like, not by force healing, not by a Bacta tank. No, she just has a medical droid just heal her. Sabine was stabbed with a lightsaber, and she's fine. She's just fine. But that's a Star Wars thing. That's not necessarily a show thing. That's a Star Wars thing in general, but it's a thing that, whatever. I got to mention it as a critique. And then the other critique as well is a me thing. It is 100% a me thing, where I grew up watching Rebels and loving Rebels so much. I love Rebels so much. Rebels is probably my favorite Star Wars thing, just in general. It is my favorite Star Wars thing. It just like how Star Trek Lower Decks got me into Star Trek, Rebels is pretty much what kind of fully got me into, like, modern Star Wars, when, like, the sequels coming out and everything. Like, I've always been a Star Wars fan, but, like, Rebels is kind of what got me fully into Star Wars, the way that Lower Decks and Strange New World got me into Star Trek. So the fact that they recast pretty much the entire Rebels crew as different actors. So we have Natasha Leo Bordizzo as Sabine. That's different than the animated series, since we have Mary Elizabeth Winstead instead of Vanessa Marshall for Hera. It's just throwing me off a little bit. It's just throwing me off a little bit, but it's something that I'm just going to have to get used to. It's just going to have to get used to. However, there was a really cool thing. There was some really cool stuff in there as well. One, they brought back David Tennant. David Tennant voices the droid Hu Yang, who was in the Clone Wars for 3 episodes, and he was part of the Jedi Temple, and he taught the Padwans and the younglings there how to build lightsabers. He was a lightsaber teacher. Well, they brought him back to voice the character, and it's great. It's just great to hear David Tennant do a voice in a show. It just really is phenomenal to hear that. Also, other cool thing is they brought in Clancy Brown. They brought in Clancy Brown to reprise his role as Ryder, Governor Ryder now, of Lothal, who was a main character in Rebels. And the funniest thing is, when he was doing that character, he was, old enough that he could probably play the character in live action. And now he definitely is old enough to just play the same character in live action. And they did. They just had him come in and play the character in live action. And it's really cool. It's a little thing like that. Where it's no, this is great. This is a great little Easter egg. If you know, you know. If you don't know, it's just cool to see Clancy Brown, because Clancy Brown is the best. But yeah, so that's a great thing. Those are my only minor critiques for the show, is wounds in Star Wars kind of don't matter at this point, because they can just write them out with any type of science fiction, BS, medical stuff that they need to write them out with. And there's a couple of pacing things in the show, which is just again a Star Wars thing. Not as bad as it has been in other Star Wars shows, but this one it's there a little bit. You can definitely feel it, though the episodes do move really, really quickly. And then obviously the voices just sounding different to me and having to get used to them. But all the characters feel right. All the characters feel like the characters should feel, and that's kind of the most important thing. And I am extremely excited to see where the series goes and to see what they do with it, because as such a big fan of Rebels, I'm very curious, are we going to see Ezra beyond the hologram that we saw? I know we're already going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn, because we see him in the trailers, but how are we going to get Thrawn? Where are we going to get Thrawn at? How much of an impact will he be? What other things are going to be as impactful with the series, and what's going to be coming from this series is what I'm really excited about. And I'm really hoping this series delivers a little bit harder than Mandalorian did, even though I did still like Mandalorian Season 3. Don't get me wrong, I still liked Season 3 of Mando a lot. But I'm really hoping this series delivers more than that did. Definitely more than Obi-Wan did, because Obi-Wan I felt was a major disappointment. And I'm hoping it delivers more than Book of Boba Fett, which I also thought was pretty decent, but could have been better. So I'm really hoping this series... I have high expectations of the series. That's basically what I'm saying. I have really high expectations of the series, and I really hope it meets them. And I think it will at this point, but I'm cautiously optimistic for it, just because it is Disney and it is Star Wars, so you gotta be a little cautiously optimistic. But either way, that's my review of the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka. A little bit scattershot. I didn't take notes. I am literally this is literally me recording this and editing this right after I watched these 2, so it's very scattershot, and this is just what I'm thinking right now off the top of my head for it. So let me know down in the comments, if you would, please, what do you think about these first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, and what are you excited for in Ahsoka as well? And also, did you watch Rebels? If you watch Rebels, how excited are you? Just how excited are you for seeing the Rebel stuff? Because I'm really excited. If you didn't watch Rebels, go watch Rebels. Just go watch at least some of Rebels. I'm sure there's a list out there somewhere of some of the episodes you need to watch for this series. Or just go watch Season 4. Season 4 is all you really need to watch too. But either way, let me know all that down in the comments as well. If you like this video as well, leave a like. It definitely helps out in the almighty YouTube algorithm. And if you want to do more for the community as well, you want to join the community and you like this community as well, then there's a link down in the description for my Discord server to join the Minty Squid Squad and join the Discord server, and we can talk more about things a little bit deeper and such, and you can join the lovely community. And you just want to help in other ways, subscribing helps as well. And you get to stay up to date on all the videos I post as well, and also become part of this lovely community as another way too. But either way, that's all that stuff. If you want to see more from the channel though, right over here's going to be a playlist for another Star Wars thing. Go watch that too. If you want to see something else, YouTube going to recommend something right here for you as well. Until next time, just stay Star Warsing everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, peace everyone. Peace.